Welcome to Deep in the Plus. I'm your host, Rob Whiteside. Thank you guys so much for being with us. We always appreciate it. If you have not already, please subscribe to WDWNT TV, as it's a great channel. We have a lot of great content for you. And please give us a thumbs up as it helps people to find the video. It is October. It is spooky season, and we are talking about spooky stuff with a couple spooky guys. First of all, my good friend Cam, how are you?
I'm great. I'm feeling very spooky tonight.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. And then, of course, the spookiest guy we know, Charlie. How's it going, Charlie?
Good. How are you guys?
Just dandy. So let me kind of give a little bit of an intro to Cam, because Cam hasn't been on the show before. You may know Charlie from Disneyland News Today. He's been on Park Center, so you probably have a little familiarity with Charlie, hopefully. But Cam is a friend of mine from, we worked together at iHeart, and he is a member of a band called the Spirit League, which is so cool, because you guys are doing covers right now of just like pop songs, but doing them in a very spooky way, right?
Yeah, it's like how Halloween-y can you get your pop music? Is kind of how we look at it. We just released a covers EP a couple weeks ago called "Estranged Familiar." Oh, there it is, right there. Look at that.
Yeah, how about
Pretty
that?
Fun. And
Yeah.
Rob is especially enamored with our spooky NSYNC cover. We can't stop talking about it.
I mean, it's gonna be me done in a spooky way. Come on, I'm here for that all day, every day. That's great, man. I appreciate you taking some time to be on with us. And again, I know you're a big fan of Halloween. You and I have like searched out Halloween serials together and all that kind of stuff. So for Halloween, Marvel was nice enough to give us Werewolf by Night, and so this is something that at D23 they talked about. Hey, we're going to do this special. There wasn't a lot of background to it, but there's a lot of coolness about this one to me, because I don't know whether, and let me ask you guys, and I'll start with you, Charlie, whether is this a Marvel MCU movie that just happens to be Halloween, or does it feel like a Halloween special that just happens to be Marvel?
It feels like just a standalone, monster movie special, but because it's a Marvel property, they just put that opener on it, and so that's like all it is. And like even as it is, like if you don't know anything about the superheroes of Marvel, if you've never seen the Avengers, you can jump into this and not be lost, and then never watch another Marvel thing and just be like, that was it, I'm done. And that's kind of its own standalone, not its own universe, but like its own standalone property, and I think that's okay.
Yeah. Cam, again, same question. Like, I feel like this one, you don't have to be a Marvel fan to enjoy it for what it is. Or, I mean, I don't know if you watched it with anybody else, like if you watched it with your fiance, and if she had opinions about it that you were like, I don't get it. Because I watched it with my wife, and she was like, I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautifully standalone, which these days is something that we rarely get, and it was incredibly refreshing. And to me, it just felt like an amazing intro to like the old Universal monster movies from the 30s and the 40s, that kids or teens or anyone who's super into the MCU right now may not have any exposure to. And this just seemed like a perfect little dessert during the Halloween season, just to get some spooky stuff in the MCU, regardless of whether or not it has anything to do with the existing phase.
There was a quote that I heard, and I've probably overused it before, where somebody said Marvel can release anything, and DC can't release a hit without it having the word bat in it. It's kind of one of the, and I think we've talked about that before. It's one of those things where this is super deep into Marvel, but I almost feel like it's disconnected from Marvel for most people, because if you don't see any cameos other than in that opening crawl, you see the six main Avengers, original Avengers in there. But after that, you don't really see much reference to anything Marvel, and it feels like it's an old school, like you said, it's an old school like horror movie, and it's like when I first saw the trailer for it, I was thinking Plan 9 from Outer Space, I was thinking Cheeseball, but it really wasn't cheesy at all. I mean, based on the trailer, I was expecting it to be just corny as all get out, but it was pretty serious, wasn't it, Cam?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it has the cheesy sheen of, like I said, old you know, the old black and whites, but like it felt like such a love letter. Like it did not feel cheesy to me. It felt like really earnest, and I was just getting such a kick out of the fact that it was like, okay, we're finally going to put blood in a Marvel property, but it's just going to be black and white, so you're not really going to be able to tell that it's blood. But I don't know. To me, it made perfect sense. It did, but problem is I'm kind of overly versed in maybe the old black and white films and the noirs of that era. So they definitely have like even the casting of the female lead. She looks like an old Hollywood starlet, which was just such a nice little touch.
Yeah. Charlie, you look like you have some comments.
I mean, no, I agree with everything. I love the old monster movies, and I kind of feel the same way. And what it throws into sharp relief for me is I think Disney has figured things out well enough where it's like DC can't get theirs off the ground, you know, despite having all the hits of the 90s, mostly Batman, but like also Christopher Reeve Superman. Like everybody knew Superman, and people didn't really know Iron Man at the time, and then they started making these movies and they were like, here, we did it right. Universal can't get their dark universe to stick no matter how hard they try, and like this is better, I think, than The Mummy was. And so, you know, you could launch a dark universe around something like this and do it in this way, because oddly enough, Disney is more reverential to the old Universal monster movies than Universal was. So I think they just know how to make good films, and like, you know, they really give it their proper shake, no matter the genre.
Yeah, and you know, I grew up Batman, DC, Superman, but also Thor, Captain America, Iron Man. So like, I want to see them all succeed, and they just don't. I feel like they just miss. Yeah. But like, Werewolf by Night was based on a comic book, and they go really deep into the well from time to time. Like Big Hero 6 is based on a Marvel comic book. I mean, it's one of those where they own so many different IP. I don't know if there's some, you know, guy named like Frank who sits in the basement and goes through like boxes and boxes of like comic books, and it's like, hey, have we done this one? We should do this one. Because that's kind of the way it felt with Werewolf by Night, is it's just like really random.
I kind of felt that same way about Guardians, though. Like when they announced that they were doing Guardians of the Galaxy, I was like, why? You have Iron Man and Captain America, and we're doing the Avengers, and like, why are you choosing Guardians of the Galaxy? But it came out so well. And when they did that, I was like, oh, that was great. But like, clearly that's a standalone. Like, they're just going to be, you know, ham-fisted cameos from now on. But like, that was their one. Good for them. And I was wrong. Like, it really fits as like the galactic part. So like, you know, this totally could be the supernatural Avengers, which is kind of how the comics have always worked. And like, they did like, you know, Justice League the same way. They have like the Dark Justice League of like Zatanna and Swamp Thing and all those guys who are like all supernatural. Yeah, like Constantine doesn't really fit with Batman in the same way. I don't think Werewolf by Night is gonna mesh well with Ironheart. So like, they're both under the label, but they're just kind of separate, and like, they're just doing good things in different directions, you know.
Yeah, Cam. Sometimes you get Guardians, and sometimes you get Eternals.
I think I might have liked Eternals more than most people. I only saw it the one time. But like, I think I was just excited that it was shot like outside, and it looked kind of pretty. So I think I might be the wrong person to ask. But like, talking about whether this is a standalone or not, like, how badass would it be if it was just like, this is all we get? Like, we never see Werewolf by Night ever again. Like, the refreshing feeling that I felt when I looked up and it was 55 minutes long, because like after like within the plotting, like they have their, you know, they have their group meeting at the beginning, and then they're just like, okay, we're all gonna fight for the Bloodstone right now. And I was like, oh, we don't have to go to like 4 other locations for the end of the first act.
Dude,
where's the
Sky Beam? It's happening right now, and I got really excited about that, because there's no fat, because the plot is razor thin in the first part, so it's all vibe, and it just feels like that really great homage, but you do get a good feeling for at least, you know, the witticisms of the characters and what they're going to be capable of. And I feel like the economy of the storytelling with this, along with just the beautiful vision was done really well.
So I have so many thoughts right now, but I want to back up to something when we were talking about it being in black and white, and you actually talked about like kind of the vibe. Do you think that the black and white was to give us that old school vibe only, or do you think that some of the black and white was to get away with the blood?
I think it. I mean, I see a world where it's both. I mean, Charlie was talking about Guardians just being like a head scratcher 10 years ago, just being like, how are they going to pull this off? Like, who would care? It's if you give it to someone with a vision, you can't say singular vision because everything has to exist within, the parameters that exist within the MCU. But
Right.
like, you give it to James Gunn, who actually cares and actually has something to say with those characters, you can cross the finish line just because someone is actually going to use those entities and that IP, in such a correct way. This they gave it to Michael. I never get his last name correct.
Giacchino.
Yes. So we have Disney's biggest composer, the guy who's been hooking him up for decades now. They give him a movie, and what
Right.
do they give him? I mean, I don't know. Maybe you guys know more than I do about, the impetus of how this all came about, but I love the idea that it's just like, okay, Werewolf by Night, it's a weird property. What do you want to do with it? It's the first time we're going to put some violence in. It's slightly scary, like it's not actually scary, but it's like spooky in the exact same way that, the older 30s and 40s movies are. And the black and white just brings it home. It sets such a good tone. Like, I feel like within the first few frames, you know exactly the type of movie that you're gonna be getting.
Yeah, and Michael Giacchino, that was something I want to talk about too. This is interesting. He has nothing to lose. He's a first-time director, kinda. Looking at his IMDb, obviously that's the musical score he did for this too. Musical score, like his IMDb is like 900 pages long, and most of it, as you said, is for Disney. I mean, the one that always pops out to me is the music from The Incredibles because I love that music. But Werewolf by Night. He did a Star Trek short treks and a Monster Challenge short. So really he's still, because this one was kind of short, as you mentioned, it's 55 minutes, and it's a TV special. It really kind of isn't his first movie, but it sort of feels like it's his first movie. I'm sure he's given a little bit more budget, and he kind of ran it like a movie. But yeah, I think he really didn't have a chance to fail in this one because it was like, let's just see what you can do. Charlie?
I agree. I think he did a great job. I mean, this is the shortened runtime. I think is the only thing that distinguishes this from what would be a full-fledged movie. Like the effects were great. I love that everything, or as much as could be done, practically was. Except for like Man-Thing, like you can't really do that practical. But certain aspects of it just feel like that old movie because like, oh, well, we're doing it real in-camera stuff. We have this on set, and it lends itself to that style of, the homage to the old films where that was their only option. So I think it was really well done, and even the little things that like he was aware of. There's a couple of shots, transitions from one to the next where like he peeks behind a wall and then peeks out from another wall, and like old things like that where it's like I've seen that in the Wolfman or it was very well done from a filmmaking point of view. Is like even the camera motion and the way he sets up like the view, the shots was so well done to harken back to how things were done back in the day. It was really well thought out and really well planned.
Did you guys notice the film markers in the movie? So
Well, they kept flying
so no,
by.
like in an old school theater movie, you'd have projectors with like different platters, and you'd have to get like a prompt that's like for the projectionist to go, hey, it's time to flip to the next projector. And so there'd be a blip in the upper corner. That was there in this one.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Like I think he could have gone even more like grainy with it because it was still HD black and white. But I feel like he could have done more treatments than that. But it just pops up. There was when they're in the sacred grounds and they're running around doing stuff. There's a point where it pops up in a circle. I'm like, that's weird, and then it pops up again because usually you would get 2 warnings when you're flipping the. So, I don't know.
Cigarette burns. John Carpenter made a Masters of Horror episode about that. It's the only reason why I know that name. But
Well,
I'm getting the solo thing. Should I talk more about John Carpenter's episode of Masters of Horror?
Just give me 20 minutes on John Carpenter and we'll be good. No, I'm just I thought you had more to say than cigarette burns. Sorry, dude. But here's
go for it.
I was just going to say, like, my mind's racing 100 miles a minute because there was a lot of things about Marvel content now that I feel like there's too much, and yet I want more. We have the movies and we have the TV shows, and they bring in all these characters and cross them over into things they shouldn't cross over into just so we can introduce them to each other. And then there's all these, like, the after the credit stingers that, like, lead us in a different direction to something and we haven't seen that yet, and all this stuff they're still talking about. It's like they can't make stuff fast enough for me. When you talk about the world of comic books, there's like 40 to 80 titles a month that just roll through a comic book store, and they keep going and going and going. And so with this, they've got this huge sandbox to play in, and it's just never enough for me. All these stingers that they do, like the one they did at the end of Doctor Strange, where Charlize Theron comes in, and that character is supposed to be a love interest for him at some other point. It's like, you don't have time to do that. Why are you showing me this character? Because you don't have time to dig in and show me what's going to happen with Patton Oswalt and Harry Styles' character, or what's going to happen with it's just too much. Go ahead, Charlie.
That the Harry Styles one, I never knew who Harry Styles was before that. At the end of one of the lesser, not terrible, but one of the lesser Marvel films, I think we can all agree. And then he comes out and he's perfect, and Pip is perfect, and like, that's the story that I care about more than the Eternals. Like, I didn't really feel much for like what was happening in the whole story of what they were going through. It's kind of clever, but like hearing like, hey, Thanos' brother is going to come out and talk about what the hell went wrong, and we're going to go on an adventure with him. That's the lead. Like, I don't really care so much about I can't even remember the lead's name, whatever her name was, and like, Icarus is basically Superman and spent most of the movie kind of moping, and like I was just so like dragged through it, and then to have Eros come out was like, okay, all right, let's go now. And then like I don't know if it's ever going to happen. I don't know what the deal is with that. Like,
and you're like, now you got to wait 7 years.
Right.
I know.
And well,
I don't know if it's going to happen in that way. I'm a little disappointed.
Well, and they even double dip because there's two post-credit scenes. One's Kit Harington's Black Knight.
Oh, Black Knight! That's right. I completely forgot about that.
And then, right, exactly. Yeah. So there's just too much. That's what I'm saying. There's just too much. And so when you do this, and again, from this point on, we're going to talk more about, obviously, the thing we're here to talk about, which is Werewolf by Night. And if you have not watched it yet, we're going to probably have some spoilers. But again, it's worth the watch, even if things are spoiled for you. But this introduces not only Werewolf by Night, but it introduces Man-Thing. And so now you were getting into that dark Marvel universe that we talked about. Like, you've got Man-Thing, and you've got Moon Knight, and you've got Elsa Bloodstone, and you've got Werewolf by Night. And then if you throw in Blade that we know's coming, and then maybe a Ghost Rider, like, pick one. We've done like 18 of them by now, right? So like, pick a Ghost Rider to throw in there. This could ramp up to be something awesome. But then you've also got the Defenders that are still kind of on the shelf and coming in a little bit because they were with Netflix. And then you've got the Thunderbolts that are coming. And then we already have like Young Avengers are on deck. Like, there's too much. There's too much coming. So it's exciting to see. And it's just one of those things where, like, I think if you had watched this without knowing that was Man-Thing, or without knowing, like, that Werewolf by Night was a Marvel comic book, then I think you'd still be okay enjoying this just as a, as a Halloween special, though.
Yeah.
So.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's my rant on that. So when this opens up, it opens up with a little bit of exposition with the whole, like, the narrator, and he's talking about, this kind of history of the Bloodstone, and, how they're going to search for the new leader of their group. And they open up with then this door opening up and Jack Russell, who is our lead character, coming in with marks on his face. We don't know why. And he walks into this tunnel, really, that has all these markings on the wall that show, basically monsters being hunted and killed. Then he comes into this large room where all these monster hunters are, and there's this big casket, and this is Bloodstone's sort of funeral, but they're going to pass on the Bloodstone to one of these hunters, and the premise is that they have to go to the sacred ground. They find whatever, it sounds like Zelda, they find whatever tools you find in the sacred ground, and you can use those to kill, the beast. And they kind of are bragging about each of them and the amount of kills they've had. And then here comes Elsa, who is Bloodstone's daughter, but Verussa, who is like, I guess, her mom, I assume? Stepmom.
It had like a stepmother vibe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she definitely had a Mother Gothel vibe. She's like, you don't belong here because you've kind of disowned the family, so now that's why we're doing this. Is the Bloodstone is your birthright, but you can't have it because you've been away for too long, but you're here to claim it, but you've got to fight with all these other dudes here to they're going to hunt a monster that we don't know about yet. But the creepy part is when they open up the casket, and then, like, Bloodstone's dead body is a puppet show. Cam, you were all about it?
That was my favorite part of the entire episode. Is they're just like, the stepmother is like caressing this casket, just talking about how good of a lover this man was, and all of a sudden just opens up, and it's like a bad animatronic episode. It caught me so off guard, and it's such a great palate cleanser compared to just like, the diminishing CGI that's happening in all movies right now. And it's just kind of like, this isn't really supposed to look real. It's kind of funny. And we're going to set up the fact that we're going to use a bunch of practical effects. And now you're just going to be on the edge of your seat for the next hour because like there's an animated corpse giving you some sort of like giving his own eulogy. Right. So instead of
the whole like Tony Stark, and the whole hologram that he gave to his folks, this guy decides he's going to be like a human puppet to, in his dead form. And it's just like, and they're all just sitting there like you said, like they're watching just some like demonic puppet show. Were you there for it as well, Charlie? Cam seems beside himself for this one.
I mean, it was fine. I didn't really have any strong feelings about it one way or another. It was a quick and easy way to get the exposition out there, I think, of like the fight. And it's also nice to see Disneyland using their animatronics in multiple places, I did like that. So, like I see it as Kylo Ren, except this one's working, and then like I see it on screen. So it brings that reality together for me.
Okay. That's fair.
Question.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Is this a period piece?
Do you want the actual answer?
Kinda, yeah.
The actual answer is no. It's in real time.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know they made it. There's like a sushi joke at the very end, but like, which didn't seem very 1940s. But like, I didn't know if that was a way for them to just like set up the idea of just like. Stuff was a bit different back then.
No, they classify this that in like sequential order. This is happening around the same time as She-Hulk and and Moon Knight. So there is a possibility because Moon Knight was actually introduced in Werewolf by Night comic book. That Moon Knight and Werewolf by Night could be, they could come together, or with Man-Thing. Man-Thing's history, and we haven't gotten to Man-Thing yet, but Man-Thing's history is very, it's embroidered in the Super Soldier Serum. So it would have probably happened after Cap. So yeah, but yeah, it's set up that way beautifully because you don't know, because you're seeing it as a a 1940s horror film. But yeah. So they go and she set up the premise that they're going to take this Bloodstone and they're going to attach it to a beast on the sacred ground, and then they're going to let these hunters go in and just kill it. What I wasn't prepared for was them trying to kill each other Hunger Games style. Like, did you guys, like, Charlie, were you expecting that to happen? I mean, I honestly thought there was just a race to see what was going to happen. I didn't know that, like, killing each other was on the table.
No, I kind of figured it was like when they're all standing there and not talking to each other and staring each other down and like being as menacing as they could, like whether it was explicitly stated or like frowned upon or whatever, like when they get in there they're going to try it anyway. So I don't know if it was like intentionally going to be part of like I brought you here to kill each other and also this other thing, but I think it's like there's a bunch of like loner maverick renegade guys who are like, I work alone, and like they don't play well with others, and that's kind of the whole thing. So of course they're going to fight, of course they're going to try and kill each other.
Well, honestly, there was an actor who was in this one who I think is a really cool guy, and we tried to get him on for tonight, but he had something else going on. But Kirk Thatcher, who was the Jovan in this one with the beard, man, he went out like a bee. I'm just going to say that. Like I really thought he was going to be in it for the long haul, and it's just, when they finally find the beast is Man-Thing, and when the first one to find him is Jack, and then like you have this kind of surprise that the beast comes and puts his hand on him, and we think, oh no, he's going to get him, but for like a half a second, because he seems too comfortable with him, and he's like, hey man, I've been looking for you. My job here is really to free you, not kill you, so let's make that happen and just sit tight. And then when Jovan like catches up with him, Man-Thing just puts his hand on top of him, holds his head, and just basically just he's dead. And I'm like, really? You couldn't have had a more yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was brutal.
You guys are dark. That's why I have you here. I love you guys. Thank you so much for being on here. I don't know if the guy's name was like Lyorn, is the guy who had the arrow on his arm and was trying to kill Elsa. Yeah, that guy wouldn't go down. Like he went down. It was a fight to get him down, I think. So that one. I was like, okay, respect to that one. But Jovan, it was just like done. But so they're running around and they're trying to get away from each other while still trying to be the first one to like capture the flag, which is kill the monster and get the Bloodstone. And somehow Elsa and Jack get stuck into a tomb, which as far as like exposition goes, this one hurt my heart, Cam. I feel like they were just shoving this one down my throat. Like they just happened to get stuck together so they can like share these dark experiences but I mean share their stories with us. Like that seems like the only reason they're caught here.
Yeah, that one seemed like, aside from the animated corpse eulogy, that was probably my favorite exposition. I just thought it was really clever. It's like, she has this family history. The whole set piece for this entire Sacred Ground, hunt is this giant graveyard, that just looks like an old set from, the Wolfman or the Mummy. And they're stuck in a mausoleum together, and it turns out it's her family's mausoleum. So I just thought that was incredibly clever. They get some back and forth. You can tell that they're different versions of good guys stuck in this fight. And that one just worked for me. And the way that they got out, I thought was actually pretty hilarious.
Yeah, she's like, oh yeah, I remember my dad telling me a scary story and that this woman had a backup plan. So I'm sure that this is what it is. And she's handing body parts to him. Like that was, that was a little macabre. I like that one. But so they get out. And they've decided they're going to work together now. They've become unlikely partners because she seems like the whole old cop. I'm not, like you kind of said, like I'm a lone wolf. I'm not gonna partner with anybody. So he's like, I just want to get my friend out of here. I know him. His name's Ted. We want to get him out of here. And yeah, exactly. And then and she's like, yeah, I want the Bloodstone. So like let's just partner up and make it happen. And then, they expose Ted. Ted, she after he kills Jovan, she runs into him. He's given her the blueprints to talk to Ted. Like, hey, drop his name, pretend like you know him. It'll be fine. He won't kill you. And so then they hang out for a second, and then they find their way to this far wall where they're going to get out. They blow the wall. Charlie, What was the bit with the bomb not sticking? Like that seems like it was like they were trying to do comedy, but I'm not sure it was funny.
Yeah, I think that was like when they finished the edit of the runtime and it came out to 54 minutes and 30 seconds, and they were like, "We got to add something," so just like it just felt kind of like a waste. I think it was a bit of a speed bump. Like I'm not gonna fault it overall, but if they were trying to go for some of that some of the comedy, like, you know, he wasn't quipping the whole time. Like they try to turn every character into Deadpool, just like incessant quips. And so he at least kind of kept his composure the whole time and didn't devolve into Deadpool. So I'll give him props for that. If this is how they want to try to do comedy, I'll take this one little bit over like everybody trying to one-up quip each other.
Izos was making a joke about the fact in chat that I said lone wolf and werewolf, and that was not on purpose. I would like to take credit for that, but that was completely accidental. Yeah.
So I'll give them props for that. If this is how they want to try to do comedy, I'll take this one little bit.
One of y'all have audio on for the video? Because I feel like we're a little bit behind.
We're good. That's my bad. First time. Long time listener, first time.
Again, Cam with the Spirit League. Don't forget to look them up on Instagram. The Spirit League, coming soon to a town near you. So anyway, but yeah. So I mean, that bit just didn't seem to land with me. It just didn't seem appropriate for the rest of the episode. So I just thought that was weird. But when he finally breaks the wall and Man-Thing runs out, he's free. He's like, he reaches for the Bloodstone. Again, there's not a reason for him to reach for the Bloodstone because they've made an agreement that Elsa is going to get the Bloodstone. But he reaches for it anyway, and what that does is apparently proves that he's a monster because he reaches for it and it blows him away. Because apparently if he wasn't a monster, he could have picked it up. But he's a monster, so he can't touch it. Again, I guess that makes sense because that's what happens in their world. But I felt like that was... Maybe it would have made more sense to me if they had established that early as a rule, but it was like a rule that we didn't know, and then like that happens, they're like, oh, that's who he is. So then they take him and they take Elsa and they put him in a big cage, and then they just assume they're going to kill each other. But what I do think is neat is at this point, I feel like we all know he's the werewolf because it's called Werewolf by Night. And he's the monster, and like we know going in because of the actor that that's what's going to happen. But he starts to be like talk to Elsa like, you know, there's a beast inside me, but it's not me. And then he goes and he's like, they're going to turn him into the werewolf, and he freaks out and he doesn't want to kill Elsa, so he sniffs her like a dog, which is kind of genius, and at the same time, Cam, made me feel a little uncomfortable.
What did he say? He's like, I need to learn your scent. And yeah. I was like, I mean, I get it. You know, I hadn't seen that before. And then when it came to the transition, obviously, if you're watching a werewolf property, you're sitting there and you're just like, how are they going to do the transition? And they have, by this point, they have done absolutely everything. It's been 100 years of werewolf movies at this point. So, I mean, Rob, are you fine if I talk about what the transition is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So while they're in the cage, all they do is you can see Elsa and she's crouched and she's staring, and it's a slow move in, and you can see she's screaming, and you just see the horror on her face, and you can only see the shadows of the flashing light behind her of his, you know, of his changing shape, and you hear all the gnarly noises and stuff like that. And that was refreshing to me because I didn't have to, you know, from a show, we're calling this a movie? I don't know, a special, a Halloween presentation that's really not relying on CGI. You know, if they're going to do a transition now, it's going to be a heavily CGI moment, and it's probably going to feel really, really out of place. So there you go. So them doing that, it's a great shot. You're just hyper-focused on her reaction to what is happening inside this cage. And then by the time you actually see what he looks like, it's incredibly throwback and refreshing. And it just looks like the Wolfman with some paint on his face and a dude wearing a very, very hairy sweater. which I kind of enjoyed. They didn't try to reinvent the wheel, and there wasn't some completely outlandish, gnarly CGI for the transition. They just left it in the shadows. They let the black and white do the work.
Yep. Charlie.
I agree. I think this is it was my favorite part of the show, that shot of her as he was transforming, very Michael Curtiz with the shadows playing across her from whatever was flickering. It's like the cattle prods were flickering and causing these shadows, and so that sound in the background. I mean, the American Werewolf, the Rick Baker transformation where you like physically see it happen as a practical effect, that's probably the best transformation of all time. But like, this has got to be at least number 2. I mean, they're neck and neck. This is so clever. Like you said, they've done werewolf transformations 100 different ways now, and like, I don't need to see another Batman origin story. Like, we get it. I don't need to see another werewolf transformation. This was such a nice new way of doing it that I think, regardless of Marvel, like, this is just a great cinematic trick that fit within this old movie he was trying to do.
And again, he's a first-time director. Theoretically, first-time director, like I said, a couple shorts, but that was an amazing choice. I feel like that was probably his choice to do, and it really paid off. I agree. Like, that stood out to me. I put in my notes that the shadow effect of, like, his transformation as opposed to the Michael Jackson Thriller transformation, which is very similar. It's the Rick Baker thing, but, like, on a budget. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Michael Jackson Thriller video, the long form, where like he does that whole thing, and it's I agree. I think that was a really well done transformation. Somebody asked in chat, Tony Stank 1138 asked this: did they say how he got invited to this in the first place? Did he kill a hunter and take their invite? So they seem to know him. It's a good question because he's a monster being invited to a monster killer's ball. And he had the most kills in the room, so they knew him by reputation as a monster killer. So I assume that in his form as werewolf, he kills all these guys and then just kind of takes credit for it as a hunter. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they talk about that in the cage. He says the one that does the killing is part of me, but it's not me, and I don't belong here, and all that kind of stuff. But he uses his curse for good, which is kind of the same thing as Morbius, not in the movie but in the comics, where
and Blade,
and Blade, yeah, like, that's kind of the thing that ties everybody together of this, where it's like, oh, you're cursed and it's terrible and whatever, but no one's giving you this mission. You're just like, well, I gotta make the best of a bad situation, I guess, and you just kind of roll with it. So yeah. But yeah, that's how he has, 100 kills or something when everybody else is topping out at like 27.
Well, and there was a comic called Midnight Suns that has all these dark characters in it, like we were talking about, Blade, and they're these like unlikely heroes, Blade and Moon Knight and Elsa, Bloodstone, and Ghost Rider and Werewolf by Night. So it'll be interesting. There's a video game coming out which has some of them in it, but it's called Midnight Suns, but it's a little bit different. But again, this is a team that I would love to see come together and be in something, but there just doesn't seem to be enough time. They've already announced like 900 Marvel TV shows and movies that are coming up through 2026. Like, I can't even plan what I'm doing next weekend, and now I got to worry about these Marvel movies that are coming through 2026. But I'm here for all of it, and I'm excited about it. But I don't know when they're going to like actually put this team together and make that happen. So he transforms. He does. Go ahead.
If they're going to do that, I want a really good Ghost Rider. Like, I think the Nick Cage version and then the
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
version, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. version. Both of them had their good points, but like, I just want one really solid Ghost Rider. He's always been one of my favorites, and I think if they take like some of the more classic and dark aspects of the Nick Cage version and get some of the more like cool powers and not peeing fire from the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. version and like smush them together into one. And I don't care if it's Danny Ramos or Johnny Blaze. Like, I just want one good Ghost Rider to come into the MCU in his own, like, do it properly, and then I think that'll be the tank for that superhero team. Sorry,
Okay.
continue.
No, dude, that's why you're here. And again, just a reminder, since this is the first time for Cam and Charlie, you guys should give us a thumbs up so that it'll warm the cockles of their hearts. If you can just give a thumbs up, that would be great. You know what? This is your all's first time watching through this. It was my first time watching through this, but I came up with some things I noticed that I want to ask you guys as trivia questions, just to see if you noticed the same things I did. Is that cool? It's not. I mean, it's only based on what you would have seen in the movie, or the TV show. Not like what issue did Werewolf by Night show up in. So here you go. So they were talking about when he first comes in. When he first comes into that chamber, the door is slowly opening up, and before we even see his face, we see he has something in his hand. What does he have in his hand? Cam, you look scared. Now the nightmare begins. I'll cut you loose here. It was the medallion. So each of them showed up with a medallion that was like their ticket in, which is what we talked about earlier. But before you see anything, as it's coming, the door's coming up, you see the medallion hanging there, and then they come up, and then you see his face, and then he walks in. So I just thought that was interesting that like they focus on the medallion, but we don't really understand the medallion. And then they mention later that like Elsa doesn't even have a medallion, so like why is she there? So it was kind of like, I feel like there should have been more about the medallions in the long run. There's that whole scene where they go outside to pick who's going to go first, and they drop their medallion in a bowl, and then like they're dropping keys in a bowl, and then they go and they pick a Scrabble tile out, which has some kind of weird marking that they all seem to understand. So I mean, his had like 3 leaves on it, and it's like, oh, was it?
Yeah, I think that was a rune that he pulled out. I can't remember. I vaguely remember it being a rune.
But it looked like it had like 3 leaves or something on it, which didn't look like, you got number 1. So obviously it meant something to them. So maybe that'll come back. When they were going around the room, they were telling how many kills everybody had had. If you didn't get the first one, you won't get this one. How many kills did Jovan have? It was a very specific number.
12?
57.
Oh.
Because he had the most, and then they went to Jack, and Jack had over 100 kills. When they're going into the sacred grounds, they lead Jack in first because he's pulled the rune or whatever, and they lead him in first. And there's what?
I gotta see what that is. This is gonna drive me nuts.
Oh, good. Okay. So then when they're going through and they're taking him in, they're playing an instrument that is on fire. What instrument are they taking? What instrument is that?
It's a sousaphone.
There you go. The musician in the group knows exactly what it is. That's awesome.
I thought I was going crazy. I was like, because I heard it in the score, and then I was like, why is there a sousaphone that's on fire? It's like, oh, well, this is directed by a composer, so like, whatever. It's perfect.
Yep.
I love that.
I didn't know that was the name of an instrument.
Oh, didn't you? Okay. Yeah, it looks like a tuba, but it's more like it's got more works to it than a tuba.
Let's say this: it's
Far
a
out.
tuba you can wear. Used for marching.
Yeah.
Pretty great.
Jumping to the end of it, when Jack's having coffee, sitting next to Man-Thing on a log. What's on his coffee mug? It's on both sides of it, but just no. Are these too tough? I'm sorry.
No, I mean I'm happy. Is it like the Avengers A or something?
No, nothing like that. But it is sort of symbolic because it's the Avengers with an O or the Avengers with an I. It's a sunflower, which is ironic because Werewolf by Night. No. But it is a sunflower. I don't know why, but he's got a sunflower in his mug. When Elsa is fighting Leorn, the guy with the arrow, she cuts off one of his arms. Which one is it? His left or his right?
His left.
It is. Why do you know that it's his left?
Because I remember her picking up the hand, like it was out like this, and she chopped it off and took out the hand.
Last question.
I remember it specifically because I was so excited that they just chopped someone's arm off in a Marvel movie. I was like, and then it kept getting even gorier, and I was like, man, they really went there for about like 6 minutes.
Yeah. Tony Stang in chat says Man-Thing has sunflowers growing on him. So there you go. Oh. So final question: when they're stuck in the crypt, how many coffins are in that crypt?
6.
It's either 6 or 8.
Correct. It's 12. That is exactly right. It is 4 levels of
multiples of 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is 12. I just thought that was interesting. I don't know why, because I wanted to ask like maybe like what was one of the numbers on it, because they had like people's dates and those names. You know, it's Marvel, it's Disney. They probably every one of those plaques means something that was on the side of that thing, and I don't know what they are, but. Anyway, I just thank you guys for playing along with that again. I know it's the first time you've seen it. If it was like your favorite film of all time, I would have expected you to get all of them right. And it may be your new favorite. Who knows? Who knows indeed. So once
I pulled up that thing on here. It is a rune that he pulled. It is a rune that he pulled that's... Yeah, I've got it right here.
There you go. But see, it doesn't make... Like, to someone who's not a rune person, it doesn't make sense to me, like, that they would look at it and go, oh, well, you get to go first. You got stick and 2 leaves. You go first.
To be honest, I think what that might be a reference to is just like another nerd property. That's the rune. It's actually called Fehu, and it's for F. But in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf scratches this on Bilbo's door, and he's like, oh, it's for Gandalf. Like, no, it's totally not. It's just cool looking. But, like, that's the same rune that starts Bilbo on his journey. And so it could be that. I mean, you know, of all the things. But to pull that rune specifically.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on with this story, because, like, then what happens is they get into this deal where he's been turned into the werewolf, and he breaks out of the top of the cage, which I thought was very, interesting that he came out the top of the cage. Because he's disappeared, I would have assumed he would have just done one of those, like, pull the bars apart and go through it. But no, he just blew through the top of this weird cage that they had for him. For monster hunters, they don't do a good job of figuring out monster-proof cages, I guess. But maybe they didn't know what they're going to be up against. So they get out, and he gets out, and he just starts killing spree, killing all the guards, killing everybody. And it reminded me of, like, if you saw the Netflix Daredevil series, when Daredevil first is walking down the hallway and just people are popping out like Scooby-Doo, and he's just like killing them and, you know, just knocking them out and all that kind of stuff, because he just goes through these guys like butter, which means he's going to be a very strong foe when it comes to actually fighting in Avengers or, you know, Avengers, wherever he ends up. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that works. But he goes through everybody, and now Elsa is in the room alone. And before, I guess, he's about to get killed by the Bloodstone, and the Man-Thing comes in and does the same thing to Verussa that he did basically to Jovan, and just, like, blows her up. What do you?
It's like almost like a kind of like a melt.
Yeah.
Like, it's like half crush, half like, it's all black and white, so it looks like a lot of like electricity or something like that. But I mean, it's certainly brutal, which I found really good, because I was like, this antagonist really, really needs to go. Then I hope when she goes, it's going to be worth it.
The only thing I knew her from is she was the nosy neighbor, I think, in Desperate Housewives. That's the only thing I remember her from. And then the woman who plays Elsa is from The Nevers, which was that Joss Whedon HBO Max Victorian era show where they all had superpowers. So it's interesting. She's kind of gone that Katie Sackhoff, Summer Glau road, where like everything she does is going to be like, you know, supernatural or sci-fi. Like that seems to be her lane. But she did a great job, as you were talking about, as playing in that role. And then other than that, there's really not any like mega stars in this. The guy who plays Man-Thing is Kerry Jones, who also played Chrysanthemum in Book of Boba Fett. So I guess his role in life is he plays large dudes. So
It's niche, but it works.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's good work if you can get it right. So that all happens, and then he has that moment with Elsa where sun's getting real low, big guy. I expected her to right? No?
Yeah. Moon's
I mean,
getting real low was what I was thinking the whole time. But at the same time, I'm glad they didn't, because that's a little quippy, and there's no way she would have known. And that's what I'm thinking as a fan. And I was as I'm watching it, I'm like, as soon as enough people have seen this, I'm going to post on Instagram so hard. I'm going to be so funny. But I'm glad they didn't actually do that in there, because it would have thrown off the whole dynamic and the feeling of that old movie. And I think the same with putting the detonator in the wall is you don't really need the comedy right now. We don't have to. So it's good enough just holding that note. We don't have to cheapen everything with a joke or a gag. We can just hold that feeling for a second, and it's okay.
Yeah. No, I agree. So then after that, the man thing coming back, I didn't think was necessary, but obviously it made for a good surprise, death for Verussa. So that, I guess that had the payoff for it, but it seemed like they could have probably taken care of that otherwise. So then he runs away, and they leave, and they're gone. And then she sits down, triumphant in the fact that everybody around her is dead. And then because of that, now she turns red. The entire movie, the only thing that was red was the Bloodstone, and now they start playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and the red color comes in. Cam, what does it mean? What's the symbolism?
It means the movie's over.
No, come on.
I don't think it has I don't think it has the same symbolism as the girl in the red coat from Schindler's List. I think we're being introduced to Elsa Bloodstone, as a character who's going to continue. She is coming into her destiny. Guys, I'm grabbing at straws. What else do we have here? It's a nice.
See, you had such confidence about what you were saying. I was like, I'm going to let him go. And you're just vamping. I didn't realize that you were doing that. Sorry. I apologize. I didn't put you.
Being why are they playing this song? I was just trying to figure out why. I was trying to figure out what that song had to do with what was going on in the story, aside from they had done I don't know what song was playing earlier, but when they were first having the meeting, they're being introduced to everything. The huge situation that they're in has all these monster heads on the walls with all these amazing shadows, and they have the exact same thing. They have the old record player playing a creepy record, and it's I've watched a million horror movies, and I still love that trope. I just still love it. It feels so good. And at the end, it's okay, we're still using the sonograph, but it's a hopeful song.
Well, not to give your band yet another plug, but Spirit League, that's kind of the same thing. Is y'all are taking a regular song and making it a little bit creepy. Whenever you do that, especially in a Disney attraction, when you hear a little kid singing "It's Raining, It's Pouring" in the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, it's you just took a song that is a children's song and you made me scared just now. Taking a song and make it what I like to call haunting is just there's something strong about that. And a song you're familiar with in its good form, and then they kind of start to use it against you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to score against picture, and you can just 3 simple steps: slow it down, make it minor, have a kid sing it. You're done.
Charlie, what were you going to say?
Epic Mickey does that really well. A video game that came out a while back on Wii that no one played because no one had a Wii, and it's the clock face from It's a Small World is slowly melting and deranged. So they take the It's a Small World song and make it really creepy and intense while you're fighting the ride facade. And they have a giant Elliot from the Electrical Parade because it wasn't in the parks at the time. So they were oh, it's forgotten and lost. And so this giant Elliot animatronic is like trying to step on you and stuff, and repurposing a lot of these themes to make them creepy and played on like a really intense organ. You know, it's just a great soundtrack to begin with, but like it was a fantastic game as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's I played that game. I mean, if it's Mickey, he's my boy. I'm gonna get that game.
Yeah.
That's so once they find themselves free, and she's turned red, and we're hearing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which ironic that Somewhere Over the Rainbow is, and this was the only thing that like kind of my wife like perked up for, was that song, because she loves that movie, is played when it's still black and white. And so the idea that in this one they used it for the transition into color didn't, like, I'm lost. I'm not really sure why that song went at that moment, except for the whole rainbows have color and the colors coming back into the picture. But this is the moment then where we kind of cut to Jack waking up, Man-Thing's there taking care of him, and I'll show this piece right here where you know, they're sitting on a log together. They've got a coffee press. There's a payphone in the background, and I think that the purpose, and I'm guessing here, is to show us that this is modern day, that this is, you know, this is today.
I did not see that coffee press. That's actually funny to have the French press in there.
I think it's an entry into the MCU. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I think it's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like the Somewhere Over the Rainbow is just that hearkening to like, oh, it's an old movie and we're transitioning. Like, we all know it's talking about Wizard of Oz. That's one of those songs that's like so synced up with it. It's not a standalone thing. You know you're referencing Wizard of Oz, and they're transitioned from black and white to color as she enters Oz in this wider world of mystical wonders and stuff, and then bringing the whole film into color, I think, is like, oh, well, we're using this as, you know, the bridge to be like, this was his standalone, a Marvel special, and now he's going to be entering the wider world of Marvel and hook up with all the other characters and everything. Like, we're not going to keep going where he's going to be in black and white and this is his thing.
Yeah, you were going to say that, Cam, right?
Yeah, I mean, Charlie, I completely agree. The thing that bothered me, it's like, okay, obviously if we see Werewolf by Night again, he's not going to be in black and white. I understand that. I'm shocked that they even made a movie that was in black and white, which is just, amen. Love that. But the tone completely changes. You've got the French press, you've got dudes talking about sushi, you know, they're quipping back and forth, and all of a sudden it's like, exactly like you said, it's like, oh yeah, we're in the MCU now. Like,
so you're saying like you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, you can't unring that bell because you can't get this vibe again. This was a one and done with this vibe.
Yeah,
and that makes you sad.
I mean, it makes it special. I think I'm just, this to me is a win. I'm happy they gave someone money to make something that's singular and interesting. It even if it is just a homage and a throwback and isn't groundbreaking, I think within the context of the TV shows and the movies that they're putting out right now, I think it's a big win. I just was kind of, you know, taken aback as soon as it became an MCU feeling thing at the end, where it's like, you know, two monsters talking to each other about completely normal things, which is like, it's funny. I still laugh at the quips in the MCU, just not all the time, because sometimes they just feel so completely out of place. It's like, this is a very, very remorseful, like, we love a remorseful werewolf. It's like our favorite part about that myth of just like the guy who's so upset every time he wakes up, and he's just waking up being like, oh, I need some coffee. Did I kill anyone last night? Like, what's going on? And it's exciting because you're looking at Ted, and he looks so good. And I wouldn't be surprised if part of that was practical. Like, I feel like part of that must have actually been practical, but like, I can't find any pictures. I have no idea. Yeah.
You should look it up on Google. That's what I was going to do. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Like, oh no, Rob uses Google.
No, well, so here's what I was going to do is that like I said, I reached out to Mr. Thatcher, who played Jovan in this one. And I saw on his, and again, he's going to come do something with us later, probably Muppets, because he had something, he was attached to Muppets, and so we're very excited that we'll be able to get him involved. But somebody asked him that question on his Twitter account and said something about, like, you know, what was the deal with that character? And he did say that some of it was practical. So that's what I was kind of going to look for. He said practical arm and hand, then CG over KNB creature supervisor, Carrie Jones performing in a CGI stand-in tracking suit. So, because somebody asked the question about him, whether he was CGI or not, because from a CGI standpoint, he looks really good in the daylight. Like, that's the trick, right? Is that you can make CGI look okay in the dark, but in the daylight, it makes it harder, like they did with Luke in Mandalorian or in Book of Boba Fett. Like, it makes it harder to do CGI in the light because it exposes everything. And to your point earlier, Cam, like, you know, you and I were talking about the She-Hulk coming in. I think that the She-Hulk is amazing, but I'm starting to, and I usually like everything. You know that about me. Like, I drink the Kool-Aid. I will go, thank you, can I have another? Like, you know, just give me whatever. I like a bunch of things. I like to like things, but the CGI is starting to wear on me in She-Hulk because it's just not quite there, whether it's her lumbering through a room.
It feels super rushed, you know, and it feels like always out of place. She's always like the only CGI thing in that, you know, movie. It's like you think of all the Avengers battles and stuff at the end of Endgame. It's like you can get away with it because nothing is real on that screen. It's like you're shooting that in a brightly lit, you know, windowed law office, and it's like that better be really, really good CGI. And it's like, judging with, as we've heard, and the schedules that people are on for these shows, like, you're not going to get probably what you need for that. Which is why Werewolf by Night, very, very, it's a palate cleanser. It feels incredible to see some of this stuff on screen in that way, and to not even have to access that part of your brain to be like, I know that that's really fake, and I don't want to think about it, but it's so obvious that that's fake that I can't stop thinking about it.
Okay, so I'm going to get to final thoughts from you guys on this. So one thing that neither of you guys have been on the show before, so what you need to know is I'm going to ask you individually, would you recommend this? And you're going to have to tell people if you would actually go out and recommend this, which I think we know your answers, but it's going to have to be, you're going to have to, like, you know, support your theories. But when it comes to the Man-Thing, that's the last thing I wanted to talk about, was they don't really call him Man-Thing in this. This is Ted Sallis. This is, you know, you look at him, and if you are familiar with Swamp Thing first, you go, well, this is just a ripoff of Swamp Thing. He actually came out like 2 to 3 months before Swamp Thing. So there must have been some conversations at some point that somebody let loose something, because his, you know, the thing about the, like, Man-Thing is that he, like, took the, like, a version of the super soldier serum and then tumbles into a swamp and then, you know, kind of takes on the properties of the swamp, as opposed to, like, you know, in Swamp Thing, he was sort of saved by the swamp and turned into the swamp itself. But they're very similar. They have different powers. They're kind of connected in different ways to the world. So so I'm interested in the fact that Man-Thing got so little billing in this. He wasn't advertised as Man-Thing. If you weren't a Marvel fan, you might not know what the heck he is, because all they did is called him Ted, and isn't that cute? Because, you know, he doesn't really look like a Ted, but he did before he got pushed in, or he, you know, went into the swamp. So I'm interested to see what they end up doing with him. But again, I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to ask you guys to give us a thumbs up if you haven't. Tell a friend. You know, let people know about it, because we definitely enjoy being here with you guys and talking about these shows, especially the newer stuff that comes up. And after the show's over, hopefully you come back in the comments and let us know what you thought. You know, your personal thoughts on Werewolf by Night. But now is the time. Now is the big moment. And I'm gonna start with Charlie. I'm gonna put him on the spot first, and then I'm gonna go to Cam on this one. So, Charlie, the people want to know. We've talked about Werewolf by Night. We've talked about Marvel. We've talked about, apparently in chat, they talked about Matilda. So the big question is, would you recommend this show?
Definitely. You know, I think it makes it even easier because you don't like. It's hard to recommend Endgame to people because like if you're the kind of person who needs a recommendation to go and watch that, like you haven't watched all 700 Marvel films and like you haven't been reading the comics, you don't really know what's going on. So jumping into Endgame is a little more difficult. This one I can recommend freely because it's like it takes no background knowledge. It's just a fun old-timey werewolf special, and it's even less commitment than a movie, and you're not going to be trapped in for a series watching like 7 episodes or something. So I think this is like the ultimate thing you can recommend for someone, especially around Halloween.
Yeah, cool. Cam?
Every single thing Charlie just said. I completely, I'm serious. I back it all up. It makes perfect sense. I would recommend, and like I said earlier, I think that this would be a really, really nice intro to younger people to get introduced into the world of, Universal horror movies. And I think that if, they know the MCU has a very large, younger viewership. And I think that this would be something that would be a great warm-up to get into slightly spookier stuff. Because this isn't scary, this is spooky. It's, it's violent for a Marvel movie, but it's not violent by any other, standards. I think it's great, and I think the thing that's really important about it is that this is what happens when Marvel gives a filmmaker the ability to execute a singular vision, and it's creative, it's enticing, it's less than an hour. It's I think it's a win all around, and I would love for I would tell people to watch this, and exactly like Endgame, like if you have to ask for a recommendation, like that's not the type of property you're going to be interested in. This is just kind of a one and done. It's like a little spook show. It's just really, it's fun. It looks great. It's a perfect little Halloween treat, if I say so myself.
There, and you have. So, you know what? For me, I would say I would recommend it as a Halloween special, but not as part of the MCU because I think it's a little too deep for most people. If you are an MCU fan, you're already going to watch this. Kind of like you kind of talked about, you're already going to watch this. If you're a casual MCU person that's like, oh, tell me what to watch next, I don't know that this fits, and I think you'd be lost in the fact that, like, how does this fit into Marvel? I know that a lot of people that I talked to didn't understand how Moon Knight fit into Marvel, and so they were like, I'm not really sure what I'm watching here. When you see something like She-Hulk, and it brings in, oh, there's Emil Blonsky, there's, Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk, there's all these characters that I already know, it feels like you're already part of that. I think that if you're going into this looking for that, that's not what this is. If you're looking for that like Halloween special, I think that's great. I agree with you, Cam. I sat down with this and I was refreshed to the idea that it was 55 minutes because I was thinking, oh, this could be a 2-hour movie. I'm going to have to like watch this whole thing and figure out like, if I like it or if I don't. I know that I watched it with my wife and she was not a huge fan of it. She kind of drifted off on it because she wasn't there for the same reason I was. I was there for like, let me see what this is from an artistic standpoint, from a spooky standpoint, and I was there for the whole thing and loved every bit of it. So I think for the most part, I would recommend this too to the people who watch this show with us. And even if you've gone through this and you haven't watched it yet, but you got some spoilers here, I think it's an amazing cinematic piece that I think you should watch. Even if you feel like you've gotten the spoils from this. So, again, let us know what you think in the comments below. We appreciate all you guys being with us. Dawn, Tony, Kyle, I'm just looking through the chat here. Mike, Tran, thank you guys so much for being with us. And next week, we were going to do Toy Story of Terror. So if you're looking for something a little bit lighter, that would be your homework for that. And then we're going to finish off Spooky Month with Maleficent. And then we're going to go into November. Charlie's coming back to do Zorro because he called it. He pointed to it and said we need to do Zorro. So that's coming soon too. Cam, thanks for being with us. Good luck with the Spirit League. Hopefully, you guys, we'll start to record some Marvel music, get into Marvel movies, make it big. We can say we knew you when, all that kind of stuff. That would be great.
I wouldn't mind some Marvel money, but I'll stick to some streams for now. Have you guys done Hocus Pocus 2 yet?
We did last week. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it.
All right.
Where were you, man? I could have used another person. It was fine. It was all good. We talked about Hocus Pocus too. I'll tell you what. Hang around after this, and you can give me your dime store thoughts about it.
All right.
Again, thank you guys so much for being with us tonight. We appreciate you. Hopefully, we will see you for Park Center on Sunday. And otherwise, have a great week. We'll see you soon.